Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mentally Fit Athlete. My name is Lydia Garcia, and I'm here with Dr. Jason Von Steets. And today we're going to answer some of your burning questions about sports psychology.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah. These questions are coming from a high school sports psychology class. But man, time flies. So maybe it was a month or a couple months ago now at this point. I don't really remember, but I had the opportunity to talk to a high school sports psychology class. And then this is another one of the questions that I was asked.
Yeah, so these athletes really wanted to know, or these high schoolers wanted to know, how does an athlete's attitude and feelings toward their opponent affect their performance? So I guess they're asking, like, if you're playing your rival high school or you've got some nemesis on the other team who you've been trying to beat them since middle school and and they just
Sure.
keep coming up and you have these really big feelings about how that one time they defeated you or got you out on base or blocked your shot or something.
Yeah.
Maybe this person might have a feeling about their opponent, or maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe it's
Sure.
not a negative association. Maybe it's, oh my god, I really look up to this
Sure.
other athlete at this school, and they have a really big feeling in that way, almost like yeah, just admiration for the other
Sure.
athlete. And so I guess this question could be about how could the athlete who's feeling these emotions, whether they're positive or negative, affect their performance. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah. There's a lot that could happen, and I think um, there is already some classic advice that athletes would hear from their coaches. Like you might a coach might say you want to play your own game or play to your own strengths, or if you're in wrestling, like wrestle your match versus trying to maybe think a little bit too much about what your opponent is going to do. That being said, it is a good idea to, maybe watch film, just all that classic stuff. Be aware of your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. But in the end, it's going to come down to you playing to your own strengths. Um, so one of the important things to keep in mind, and this is another just kind of classic sports psychology concept to keep in mind. So it usually just goes back to the fundamentals. So there's the idea of controllables and uncontrollables, and there's a lot that's outside of your control, and anything that your opponent does is outside of your control. Your opponent's strengths, weaknesses, outside of control. Um, what the ref is going to do outside of your control, all that stuff. And what's in your control, your own preparation, your own pre-competition routine, your own strength and conditioning that you've been working on, your own technique you've been drilling that you've been working on, your own mindset. So it really goes back to you focusing on what you can control and doing your best versus spending too much time focusing on things that are outside of your control, like what your opponent's going to do. And then, opponents can change, depending on what sport you're in. If you're a wrestler, you could think you're going to wrestle someone and then they lose their wrestle off to their teammate. And now you're wrestling someone with a completely different set of strengths and weaknesses. Or if you're in track, your opponent that you're thinking about could be in a different heat, or they could get injured and you're thinking about somebody else now. So, you want to be prepared, but ultimately it's about focusing on what you can do. What do you think about that so far?
Yeah, I mean, my coach says that a lot, like trust in your training, right? And like
Yeah.
you put in the work, and the work that you put in is the only thing that you can really control. Of course, like if going in, injury prevention, how you fuel, how you sleep, all of those kinds of things
Yeah.
are really your controllables. And if you're noticing that maybe fuel intake or sleep is affected because there's an anxiety response possibly to
Right.
the anticipation of what it could be like to take on this opponent. That's when there's a little bit of a bigger issue, I'd say, and
Sure.
where that athlete should probably sit back and talk with coach or talk with their therapist, talk with
Mm.
someone who they trust to understand those emotions. And, emotions are not gendered. So
Sure.
regardless of, you know, what sometimes we've seen in society or social media, whether you're male, female, non-binary, anything, right?
Right.
We all experience the same spectrum of emotions, and it's important as athletes to be able to understand and acknowledge those so that we know where we can maybe do better or how we can help ourselves out a little bit more in competition. So to whatever
Yeah.
extent parents and coaches especially can foster those kinds of environments for emotional expression, that really helps when taking on an opponent that might make us feel intimidated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I wish I could think of an example right now. But
I'm
but I know.
thinking of, I'm really thinking of times when uh, I'm thinking all the way back to the 90s with the
Sure.
Little Giants. Did you ever watch Little Giants?
I remember the annexation of Puerto Rico.
Yes, the annexation of Puerto Rico, and also intimidation, right? When they would
Yeah.
come out with the antacids and like it was like foaming at the mouth. So I mean that was pretty funny, but it's also,
Yeah.
it was the 90s, the time when I want to say almost having that very almost cartoonish
Sure.
stereotypical like rivalry
Mhm.
of like the big guys versus the little guys,
Sure.
um this getting in your head
Mhm.
psychologically, really blatant like unsportsmanlike conduct was
Right.
kind of like, I'm not going to say accepted, but
Sure.
at least shown in the Little Giants movie, right? So
Sure.
like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
grew up with a little bit of that. And you know I think and I'm not positive what it looks like exactly on the field today when it comes to intimidation of one team or one athlete versus another
Mhm.
team, another athlete, and what those rivalries might look like. The times are kind of changing where it might not
Mm.
be, we might not see it blatantly on the field. It could be things that happen online,
Yeah.
and that kind of bullying culture that exists there.
Sure.
Um, so looking out for all of those signs, and I think, going back to like as an athlete, what can we control and what can't we control? We can control the amount of time that we're spending scrolling,
Right.
looking at nonsense, right? We can
Right.
control if we want to leave that group chat or not. We
Sure.
can
Yeah.
control, how much of any of that content we want to consume ahead of a competition. I've worked with athletes before who are track athletes that um, they would see who was going to be in their heat, or they know what schools they were going to be
Mm.
racing against, and then they would immediately check. Oh gosh, I'm athletic.net, because
Ah.
athletic.net
Yeah. Yeah.
has all of the times logged of all your opponents. So she would
Yeah.
look at that, and then immediately she lost the race in her head already,
Sure.
because she's doing this comparison thing of so and so is in my heat. There's no way I'm going to win. And immediately, like you lose the race. So that's a place where you have control over those things. That girl doesn't
Mhm.
doesn't know or care that you looked her up, but
Sure.
but
Sure.
but she this my athlete um, would have already created a little bit of a disadvantage for herself mentally.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's an uncontrollable. However fast your opponent runs, and
On paper, right? Because
yeah,
every race is a little bit different.
right,
You don't
yeah,
know what the circumstances were around that race. Was there a tailwind?
sure,
Like,
exactly,
was it like just perfect conditions and that's why it happened? Every single race isn't going to be a PR. Every single every single competition isn't going to be a win.
Right.
It's not going to be your best performance every single time. So you have to do what you can do on that day, right? It could be
Yeah.
raining, it could be windy, it could be cold, it could be hot, it
Right.
could be lots of different things,
Right.
but we can't control the
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, then that does remind me. This was a while ago, and I could be getting everybody's names wrong and all that stuff. But there was a freestyle wrestler for the U.S. The Olympics years ago. I think his name was Henry Cejudo, and he was like down and out, and he thought, oh, I just need a confidence builder. And then he looked at his bracket, and then he saw that he was going to wrestle this really tough opponent. And I can't remember if it was in the Olympics or to qualify for the Olympics. But normally that would demoralize somebody. But then he thought, oh, great. I'm going to have this really tough opponent, and then after I'll have lots of confidence after I beat them. And then he did beat them and go on to win gold. That's going to be really tough for a lot of people. That's a cool story.
Mhm.
That's really inspirational. I mean, that's a great example of focusing on what you can control and your mindset. Um, at the same time, an opponent is an opponent, and focusing on what you can do is going to be really helpful. And you know, if it's somebody that you think is an easy opponent, they could surprise you. That happens all the time. And if it's somebody that you think is too tough of an opponent, you could surprise them. That does happen all the time. So it's still like the lesson is still focus on what you can do, do your best, and don't spend too much time looking at brackets and let your coaches do that. Let your coaches strategize,
Yeah.
and,
Hmm.
and you just focus on
Yeah.
your competition.
Trying to predict the future,
Right.
we really can't do that. You just have to run your race, do your
Hmm.
thing, use your skills, trust in your training is
Hmm.
kind of the thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
I kind of want to offer up, like, think about, well, let's say an athlete is listening to this and they've experienced this where they have um, anticipated a matchup between some one of their rivals, some competition that they have, and they're kind of freaking out. What would you tell them to do?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So, all the freaking out. Well, I would wonder: are they looking at their opponent's social media and seeing their highlights? Are they um, what are they doing that is leading to the freaking out? And then what can you do that's more helpful? Um, so probably not looking at their social media, not buying into their hype, not doing any of that stuff, focusing on the things that work for them. And it can be helpful to think, to ask yourself, when did I perform my best? What competitions, what series of competitions did I perform my best? What practices do I remember feeling the best and performing the best in? Um, and then seeing if you can kind of connect the dots and come up with themes that were present. Like, were you remembering to take your breath before? If it's baseball, before or in between each pitch, were you taking a slow, controlled breath? Were you making sure to do your pre-performance routine before every practice? Um, were you were you lighthearted and having fun and treating it like any other day, or were you really serious, really focused? Um, you know, and everybody performs best, in a little bit of a different context. And it's important to be honest with yourself. There's a lot of people who think that they perform their best when they're loose and joking around and having fun, and really they're getting off task. And then there's other people who stay loose and joke around, and that's when they do perform their best. So it's important to be really honest with yourself, and you might have to ask for feedback from your coaches, because I've been in different situations where maybe I'm doing a team building session and coaches are present, and one of the athletes will say, "Oh, I like to get mad, I like to get hit," and then that fires me up, and that's when I perform my best. And then later on, I've heard from coaches that is not when they perform their best. They make lots of mistakes, they get sloppy, they forget the game plan. I've been telling them over and over that's not when you perform your best. So it's important to be honest. Maybe you have to watch film, maybe you need feedback, but whatever is going on when you're performing your best, those are things to pay attention to, and if it's under your control, then do an experiment. See if doing those things will help you you know to to stay focused, to stay in Ken Revisa's green light. If you remember us talking about Ken Revisa, and yeah, give you the best shot at getting the outcome that you want. And
Yeah.
ultimately, paying attention or focusing too much on outcomes is just another thing that's outside of your control. We all care about outcomes, but the more you focus on the things that are actually within your control, the better off you're going to be, and the more likely you're going to be to actually get that outcome that you want.
Yeah, I like that because you're calling the athlete to really reflect and to really like understand themselves a little bit better. It's
Yeah,
interesting that the athlete who said, oh, I perform my best when I'm hit and I'm angry and
yeah,
all these things, and the coach is like, no, that's not true, bro.
right.
And it's like, well, where does that come from? Where does that?
Mm-hmm.
That's just what this athlete thinks would
Mm-hmm.
be based on whatever, masculine identity maybe is
Right.
is behind that, right? Instead of like, oh, actually, I really need to study this thing, and I really need to, I need to be calm and meditate
Right.
before this event or before this game so that I'm fully in it and I can remember those plays with a clear mind. But in I'm imagining that's like football or something. So
Sure.
in the world of like kind of a hyper masculine sport like that, going the opposite direction might not be as well received um,
Yeah.
by like society, right?
Sure.
Um, so something that I would kind of like challenge an athlete to do would be reflect in this way, like, right, what am I feeling, and what am I experiencing right now? Why am I feeling this thing right now? And what
Mm.
would I be doing if what would I feel if I didn't have this feeling? So what would happen? What would the outcome be? Because right now I'm worried that everyone's going to judge me if I say that I that I'm going to go meditate before this game. Why am I
Right.
having this feeling? I'm having this feeling because I've always been taught that men should be right. Men
Sure.
should be masculine. Men should just be hit hard. You get angry and you play like that. Annexation of Puerto Rico, and then but what would I be if I didn't have that feeling and I
Right.
let myself go and maybe meditate, do take some deep breaths, focus, review the plays in a calm, quiet environment? Oh, I would be more focused, and I'd be ready to take it on in a much different way. Um, but we can use those three questions for just about kind of anything that's kind of challenging
Yeah.
us. What am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling that thing? What would I do if I didn't have that
Sure.
feeling?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good question to ask yourself in your sport, in your studies, if you're a student athlete, in your personal life. If you're wondering, like, yeah, what's going on with me and my friends, and how come we don't really get along, and how come people just think I'm a jerk sometimes?
Yeah.
It's another, these are good questions to just keep asking yourself in any situation.
Yeah, yeah. The good self-reflection and just kind of a template for self-reflection so that
Yeah.
sometimes it's so that we can get out of our own way.
Sure.
I,
Sure.
I, I
Yeah.
always love that phrase of like, let's get out of our own way. Like
Yeah.
putting your like all the things that are outside of your control that you're throwing inside of as like obstacles to
Right.
get toward the goal that you want, like checking out race roster, not race roster, what did I call it, athletic.net, and like
Mm.
psyching yourself up with the times,
Yeah.
looking at someone's Instagram and all their highlight reel, looking up all of the past stats of whatever team it is that you're going to play. All of those things are just extra obstacles that are that are not supporting your performance.
Right. Yeah. And I think we've all had the experience of, you know, maybe just having fun and then performing above our normal
Yeah.
ability. And Ken Ravizza used to work with really good baseball players. And if they're in a slump or they're just struggling, one of the things he would have them do is just think back to when they were playing, when they were just hitting a ball in their backyard. And he would have them play a little bit of wiffle ball and just get back to having fun, get back to the point where you want to play and you it's just fun for the sake of fun, doing it for the sake of doing it. And then that can do a lot to get someone out of their head and then just competing, just performing again.
Yes, I love that. I love that idea of
Yeah.
fun and just like reminding everyone, all the athletes, you started this because it's fun. Keep doing it
Yeah,
because it's fun.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I think that's good for now, but what do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
All
great.
right.
So everyone, make sure to have fun.
Absolutely.
No matter what you're doing, make sure to make it fun.
Absolutely.
Your
And
opponent's
then
also there to have fun. So just enjoy yourself.
yeah,
Yeah, just
it is
enjoy
a
yourself.
sport.
Don't hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Just enjoy yourself.
Right. We are talking about sport. We are talking about athletic competition or some kind of performance. These things are meant to be fun, and then we put pressure on them and make them, and they are more than just fun in a way. They can be very inspiring. They can be very uplifting. They can help to create community, but also they're games. So just
Yeah, yeah.
or it's art or whatever it is. So just getting back to that fun aspect is always helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
So thanks everyone for joining us today. Jason, how can they find you?
You can find me at my website, drjasonvonsteets.com, and then you can go to Instagram or Blue Sky, and my handle is at CVT Sports Psych. Where can people find you?
You can find me on my website at lydiagarcia.net or on socials at liddy.g.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
All right. Let's do this again.